Hello, my name is Dev. I've been a serious guitarist for what is coming up on about 40 years pretty soon, and if you're watching this, chances are that you're a guitarist too. And being a guitarist has been central to my identity and my worldview for that entire time. It got me thinking recently about the people I've known who've stopped playing, and could anything happen to me that would stop me from being a guitarist? Not just someone who plays the guitar, but someone who is a guitarist. I'm not sure that's possible for me, and that also got me thinking about the stories of the players who have inspired me, not just as someone who plays an instrument, but as someone who perseveres to continue to play that instrument. So today's video is going to be about 4 legendary guitarists, their stories, how those have inspired me and millions of others, not just in how they've continued to play, but also I'm going to go through some of the lessons that I've learned on the instrument. So I'm editing this video right now, and I realized that here, right above my desk where I'm editing the video, is this slash thing that I did in art class in 7th grade, shortly after I saw Sweet Child of Mine on TV, and I first realized that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a drummer before that, and I still play the drums, but that was the moment where I realized I'm a guitarist. I was inspired to do something like that, and I can't think of another thing that I still have that I've had that long in my life. It's been up everywhere I've lived and everywhere I've played music. So even if you aren't directly influenced by Black Sabbath, but you play some heavy music on the guitar, you're influenced by people who were influenced by Black Sabbath. It's almost a complete certainty. And Iommi's playing is iconic. It still absolutely slams. He would do things like start the riff for Iron Man, not on the root. And there are other things like his use of downtuning that people just kind of forget about. It's just really weird. People think that's started getting popular in the 90s as a way to make guitars sound heavier. It's no, the Sabbath was doing it out of necessity, but it absolutely, changes the way that the guitars sound and feel. Hendrix was even downtuning. So yeah, Iommi I don't even know what made us feel like we could write more riffs after some of the stuff that he had done. We used to play a version of War Pigs in one of my old bands. And every time we would bust it out, there were times, almost every single time on stage, I was like, I can't believe I get to play this music. It is so powerful and awesome. If you haven't, go back and play some of that Sabbath stuff, turn it up, and have some fun for an afternoon. Bonjour. Une journée difficile? Tu devrais revenir plus tard ce soir. Django Reinhardt sera sur scène. Un guitariste pas comme les autres. Croyez-moi, vous ne voudrez pas le manquer. Django had a lot of things working against him. To begin with, he was borderline illiterate to the point where on early recordings when his name was misspelled, he didn't know. But more than that, of course, there was a large house fire that almost had one of his legs amputated and heavily impeded his use of his ring finger and his pinky finger on his fretting hand, which, as you'll note, he almost never uses. People will say that he played 2-finger guitar, but you'll note that every now and then he does fret a couple notes with those fingers, even though he had very limited use of them. And I just want to take a moment to just talk about, or just appreciate just how impossibly cool these guys seem, even today. Really amazing stuff. Let's take a look at what we can learn from them too. So when my brain thinks about acoustic jazz guitar, it automatically sounds like Django in my brain. That's the prototype to me. And a couple things that he does in his playing, when I was really trying to learn them, they changed a lot of how my fingers work. So the other year I did a song called OMG, That's So Cliche, where all I was really trying to do was bite his style. And you can hear there these short phrases that end with a staccato note, where I'm not holding the note out. And my blues and rock background wants me to go, or maybe not with, that's a Zakk Wylde vibrato, but like I want to hold out notes and vibrato them and let that fill the space. But his use of silence, not from a note dying out, but from intentionally muting it right as soon as you play it, gives the listener a completely different feel. Really, really difficult for me to like retrain my fingers and my hands to use that, because most of the time if I wanted to create space, I would hold out a note the way that Gilmore Santana would, or Frusciante or something like that. The other thing he does is he'll do a real quick ascending arpeggio and again, just like kind of build up to a note that he doesn't hold out. I love that sound, and I use stuff like it all the time. That's a shape I use all the time. I'm going to do a Fretboard Friday on that eventually. But Django absolutely changed the game. Totally worth listening to his stuff. It's still pretty mind-blowing today. Few human beings, let alone guitarists, have impacted the world in which we live nearly as much as Lester Pulsfus, better known as Les Paul. Now, when Les Paul is brought up, usually we're talking about the guitar, or someone starts talking about how he invented the solid body electric guitar, which he did. But we're going to even just wipe that away before we even talk about and listen to some of his stellar playing and what you can learn from it and from him, and the hardships he had to go through to continue playing. He also invented multi-track recording. People who love like The Bachelor and even America's Got Talent and stuff like that. Reality television. A lot of people point to The Real World, 1992, MTV. How about 40 years earlier, 1952, Les Paul and Mary Ford at Home, reality television. Do you dig what Ed Sheeran is doing with live looping, the stuff that I used to do in the aughts and thought I was at like the cutting edge? Well, go take a look at what Les was doing with his pulverizer. Reportedly built in 1956, but most of the videos I've seen are from much later. Still mind-blowing that he was able to have that vision and get that much done. We haven't even talked about his playing or through what he had to persevere in order to continue to play. Let's do it.
Vaya con Dios, my love. I'm back, honey.
Hi.
Now, you got to admit that intro sounds awesome. This is the Les Paul and Mary Ford show. Started in 1952 when, as you saw, the main sponsors, Listerine of the show, built the Kilmer House, I believe is what it was called, where Les Paul and Mary Ford moved in and built a state-of-the-art studio and started jamming like this. It is really a groundbreaking show in so many ways, but a lot of the music that they recorded there still sounds like it's kind of from the future, or at least it sounds like what people in the 50s thought the future would sound like. And let's just take a listen in a second to some of Les's playing, but keep track of how he steps outside of the diatonic pretty regularly. He even does some like sweep picking on some arpeggios here in just a couple seconds. Let's take a listen. Yeah, those are sweeps. Really incredible playing and just way ahead of their time in so many different ways. I can only imagine what it was like seeing this on the television at the time of the 1950s. So while Mary Ford was driving in 1948 and Les was very sick, I believe with the flu, they hit a patch of ice, careened off the road, and in the accident, Les's right shoulder his right elbow was shattered. Eventually, the doctors worked tirelessly to allow him to play the guitar continuously, or to continue to play the guitar, and he had his arms set permanently in the playing position. How awesome is that? Les Paul did so many things for us as guitarists and as human beings. It's hard to even say like what wasn't influenced by him. But a couple of things that I always take away from his playing that you saw in the earlier clip is his use of like hammer-ons and pull-offs to open strings. And also he does just so many fun, whimsical things with slides. So this is really around the E7 chord. Now, if the only thing that Les Paul had done with his career was invent multi-track recording, or be one of the people who invented the electric guitar, he will. If he only did one of those things in his career, it would have informed and inspired and influenced all the I words, everyone who plays guitar and everyone who does recordings with multi-tracks in immeasurable ways. Another I word, but his playing is incredible also. He does really, really amazing things all over the fretboard. And it's impossible to kind of, another I word, to kind of say like, hey, these are the things that I learned from him. But certainly the idea of recording sounds that you couldn't play live was using the guitar was a huge influence on me and a lot of other people, like reverse guitars. This is me doing it in 2023. Now, I learned that from Hendrix and Frusciante, but the concept certainly started with Les Paul. He was recording things. If you take a look at the fact that his car accident happened in 1948, and in 1950 he released New Sound, which has the most unbelievable noises on it, things that wouldn't have been possible without his inventions. The story goes that his mom called him and said, hey, I heard one of your new songs on the radio, and he was like, I didn't play that song. And he was like, hey, if my mom thinks that I sound like other people, I better create some new sounds. And he was doing things on that record that nobody else could have done prior, certainly without his own inventions. And I can only imagine what it was like in 1950 to get that record and put it on in your living room. It must have sounded like a UFO landed there. It was just unbelievable playing, and what a vision that he had for what to do and how to create those sounds. One of the things that he used a lot was obviously stacking tracks, which we all do. Anyone who uses multi-tracks does that. But also he would speed up and slow down tape to get different sounds. And that gave me some ideas, including this experiment where I tried using a 4-track as an instrument. So all of that is amazing, and that's enough. But probably the thing I learned the most from him was the fact that he was always cracking jokes. He was always smiling. It seemed like he was having a good time every time the cameras were on. Obviously, it was before my time. I don't know anybody who knew him or anything like that. But his persona, his music, everything kind of radiated joy. And it helped me understand Santana's a similar artist for me in this sense that like, a lot of people confuse darkness and sadness with depth, and that there are depths to happiness that go to the same depth, that go the same length. And we can do that. We can radiate positivity and happiness with our music. That is probably my favorite thing that I learned from Les Paul. The lineage of guitarists for Diamond David Lee Roth begins as follows: Eddie Van Halen, Steve Vai, and then Jason Becker. Now, before Jason Becker started playing with Diamond Dave, he was in a band called Cacophony with fellow guitarist Marty Friedman, who would of course go on to play for Megadeth and record what I and many others consider to be one of, if not the greatest guitar solo of all time in Tornado of Souls. Now, unfortunately, as Jason's star was rising, he was diagnosed with ALS, better known as Lou Gehrig's disease, and quickly lost control of his physical functions. I just want to very quickly also mention that, you know, I lost a family member to ALS while we were going through that journey together. while my family was going through that journey, I emailed Jason's estate just to kind of, I was looking for some connection, and they were kind enough to reply with a very encouraging and sweet message that I've held on to for honestly 16 or so years since that correspondence happened. But to say that as a guitar community, we were excited to see what Jason was going to be able to do back in the 90s when this news broke is to understate things considerably. He was one of the great mechanics of the guitar, and you'll even hear greats today like Nita Strauss come out and say that Jason is their absolute hero. So losing his guitar, his ability to play the guitar, seemed like it was going to be the end of us hearing from him as a guitarist, but it wasn't. He continued to write music using software that would track his eye movements. And then originally Shrapnel Records mate Michael Lee Firkins, I believe, was playing his guitar parts, and he's still releasing and coordinating music today. He just had a 50th birthday and released a new version of Some Assembly Required. Go check it out. It's absolutely magnificent. Jason is a worthy hero, and he's a perfect example of how nothing can stop you from being a guitarist if you are a guitarist down to your core. Let's take a look at some of the stuff that he's done and some things that I've learned from him. So the main thing that we can learn from Jason Becker is perseverance, right? Like, this guy continues to release music and bring together people in our community and inspire us. It's mind-blowing, quite honestly. But in terms of the guitar and music theory, I've learned more about music in general and the guitar as a physical tool to play music from Jason's song Air than I have from any other piece of music. I'm going to play you a passage here. It starts with that, which are just the notes in E major. So we're in the key of E major. I'm going to go ahead and put the chords for E major up over here. I'm going to play through the passage, and I'm going to call out the chord that is being arpeggiated at any point in time. The song is mostly a couple guitars playing harmony arpeggios. So I'll highlight the chord that is being arpeggiated, and if it's not in the key, I'll add it down below, and I will note how far outside of the key the chord is. So it starts with the notes in the scale. Then B diminished 7, E Lydian, D sharp diminished 7, E major, G sharp minor, then D diminished 7, C sharp diminished 7, G sharp minor, E Lydian, D sharp diminished 7, C sharp minor, the notes in the scale, A major, E major, and C diminished. Whew. Wow, I gotta say, it's not easy to both play and explain at the same time. But take a look at how far outside of the key he goes there and how cool and magical it all sounds. Just so much motion happening. One of the main things I took from this, and if you haven't seen my video on diminished sevenths yet, I'll put a card up here and I'll put a link for it in the description, is how to use diminished sevenths as a way to pass between chords that actually resolve. The diminished seventh chord to my ear doesn't actually resolve, but it's a great like passage from one thing to the next. And look at how many times he does that, how far outside of the key he gets sometimes. So the concept of modal interchange really came to me learning this as well. I didn't know any of these names or how they were used, but they were presented to me in my fingers and on the fretboard. I could figure it out, and kind of learn from it. There's another really great part here where he does this C sharp minor. So he plays these notes. It's a C sharp minor arpeggio. But he hits that open E string instead of this ninth fret of the G to like mask a position shift. Absolutely brilliant. And one of the things that I do with that a lot is like if I'm playing in G, I'll use like a harmonic or the open string to mask a position shift, like I said. I learned that from him. Jason is absolutely like just one of the greatest things that we've ever had as guitarists, and totally a worthy hero. What a creature. So like I said at the top of this video, I've been doing this for over 35 years. At this point, I can't imagine anything is going to keep me from being a guitarist. But the closest I ever came was when I had wrist injuries, in both wrists when I was younger. It was a combination of bad ergonomics when I was using the computer and bad habits when I was playing. So I wanted to discuss that very briefly here because just this week, actually, I was in a Reddit thread talking about this. And it seems like an important thing that people overlook. To begin with, stretching is super important, not just before you start playing, but regularly throughout the day. Don't just do your entire hands like this too. I highly recommend doing individual fingers or focusing on individual fingers while you're doing the stretches. I also make sure that my mobility in this direction is really good. And one of the things that people overlook regularly is larger stretches. I'm always stretching out my wrists like this in both directions. And your forearms, tightness in your forearms can really tighten up and impact what happens with your grip strength and your finger mobility. So every morning and every evening, not just before I start playing, multiple times throughout the day, I'm stretching my arms. And I've been injury-free for over 20 years now, playing just about every single day unless I'm like traveling or something like that. Of course, if you use computers a lot like I do, ergonomics in that situation is really important. Stay healthy, keep jamming.